When my mom told me they were moving into my house, I smiled and said, "Perfect." But I had no intention of staying another minute. They thought I was the safety net. They were wrong. "They'll be moving into your house next month," my mom said casually, like she was reading me a weather report. I blinked. "Perfect," I replied, forcing a smile so tight it made my jaw ache. "I'll start packing this weekend." That night, I called a realtor. I'm 30 now. 30 years of being the fallback plan. The responsible one. The invisible one. My whole life, I was the safety net, never the priority. That role? It belonged to my older brother, Marcus. He's 34. The golden child. The one they always made excuses for. The one whose messes I was expected to clean up. But something in me had quietly shifted. A small crack, spreading over time, had finally fractured into something irreparable. And it didn't snap when I overheard my parents telling Grandpa that Marcus needed the inheritance more. Because, in their words, he struggles with stability, while Elena always lands on her feet. It didn't snap when they skipped my college graduation to attend Marcus's recreational softball game. Not even when they asked for $5,000, my emergency fund, to bail Marcus and his wife out of their third financial train wreck in 2 years. No, it snapped when they offered up my house, my sanctuary, my entire life like it was some spare room in a family Airbnb. No warning, no discussion, no consideration, like I was nothing more than a placeholder in my own life. Living in Marcus's shadow. Growing up in Marcus's shadow wasn't shock. It was just normal. He got the spotlight. I got what was left. When Marcus got the latest PlayStation, I got his old console, the one with sticky buttons and a cracked controller. When he made the JV basketball team, my parents rearranged their work schedules to make every single game. Me? I made honor roll. For years in a row. My certificate went up on the fridge for 3 days, until it was replaced by Marcus's C+ in English. It was his first passing grade that semester. They practically threw a parade. "Marcus just needs more encouragement," my mom would say when I asked why they never came to a single debate competition. "You've always been our little adult," she added like it was a compliment. But I knew what it meant. It meant, we don't worry about you. So we don't care about showing up. Despite the neglect, I pushed forward. While Marcus dropped out of the state college, the one my parents paid for in full, after just 3 semesters, I was working 2 jobs to put myself through school. No financial safety net. No fallback. I earned scholarships. I graduated with honors. I landed a solid job at a financial consulting firm and clawed my way up the ladder. By the time I was 28, I'd save enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every cracked tile, every mortgage payment, every stick of furniture, all earned with my own 2 hands. No loans, no co-signers, no backup, just me. Meanwhile, Marcus and his wife, Vanessa, were bouncing from disaster to disaster. He cycled through jobs like a seasonal cold, there for a minute, then gone. Vanessa's shopping addiction didn't help either. Neither did Marcus's brilliant decision to throw $10,000, borrowed from our parents, into some sketchy cryptocurrency he'd found on Reddit. Through it all, my parents just kept enabling them. And when their own bank accounts started to feel the pressure, they came to me. "Just a small loan," Dad would say. "Marcus is going through a rough patch." Those small loans, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, added up fast. I kept a spreadsheet. In 5 years, I'd loaned them over $15,000. 15,000. Money I knew I'd never see again. The dinner that changed everything. My relatives noticed. At every family gathering, the digs were subtle, at first. "So generous of you to help Marcus out again," my aunt would say, lifting her wine glass with a knowing look. My uncle wasn't so delicate. "Must be nice," he muttered to Marcus, right in front of me. Some of us had to figure things out on our own. Still, I kept showing up. Sunday dinners. Holidays. The occasional weeknight meal when Mom would guilt-trip me with, "It's been too long since we've seen you." I dragged myself there after a 10-hour workday to find Marcus and Vanessa already kicked back on the couch, feet up on the table, cracking open the beer I brought the week before. And then came the night everything shifted. It was a Thursday evening in October. I was dead on my feet, fresh off closing a huge account at work. But I came anyway. The smell of my mom's homemade lasagna, my favorite, hit me as I walked in. That should have been my first warning. Marcus's car was in the driveway. Vanessa's leased BMW was parked next to it, the one they definitely couldn't afford. Dinner started like usual. Marcus took over the conversation, rambling about his latest business venture. This time, it was house flipping, apparently. Watching HGTV made him an expert. Vanessa showed off a new purse, easily worth more than my monthly mortgage payment. My parents nodded and smiled like they were witnessing two budding entrepreneurs, not two overgrown children hemorrhaging money. Halfway through my second glass of wine, Mom cleared her throat. That's when the real show began. "So, we've been talking," she said, glancing at Dad. My stomach tightened. "Here it comes. Another loan. They've been having such a hard time since their landlord raised the rent," she continued. "And with the baby coming—" "Wait, what? Baby?" Vanessa was pregnant? That was the first I'd heard of it. "So," Mom said, her voice suddenly light and cheery, "we figured out a solution." She smiled. "They'll be moving into your house next month." I froze. "You can take the smaller bedroom or move back in with us for a little while," she added, like she was offering me an extended vacation. My fork hovered midair. My chest felt hollow. The room began to blur at the edges. My house. "This makes perfect sense," Dad chimed in. "You've got 3 bedrooms, and you don't need all that space for just yourself." Vanessa was already on her phone. "I found the cutest nursery furniture for that front room. The one with the bay window. My bay window. My room. My space. My life. All this way," Mom added, patting my hand, "you won't have to maintain such a big house all by yourself." They weren't asking. They weren't suggesting. They were telling. They'd made this decision for me. Without me. Like my house, the one I worked 60-hour weeks to afford, was some kind of community center. Like I was community property. Something broke inside me right then. The last fragile thread of obligation snapped. I smiled. A small, bitter smile that barely reached my eyes. "Sure," I said, my voice even. "That makes sense. What are they thinking of moving in?" Relief flooded the room. I watched it happen. Shoulders relaxed. Heads nodded. Marcus and Vanessa looked smug. "The first of the month," Marcus said. "That gives you, 3 weeks to get everything organized." 3 weeks. They were giving me 3 weeks to surrender my life. "Perfect," I said, raising my wine glass to my lips to hide the tremor in my hands. "I'll start packing this weekend." The exit strategy. The rest of dinner felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I smiled when expected, nodded when required. All the while, every word Vanessa said about her plans for my house felt like a dagger under my ribs. She wanted to repaint the living room, too drab. She pointed at my handmade bookshelves, saying they'd have to go. She even joked about ripping out my vegetable garden, the one I'd spent 2 summers nurturing, because it just isn't my aesthetic. Every smug comment only made one thing clearer. I was done. That night, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, parked 3 blocks from my parents' house. My hand shook so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. My chest felt like it might explode. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. So I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. Then I took a breath, wiped my eyes, and made the decision that would change everything. If they wanted my house so badly, they could have it. But not the way they thought. 2 months earlier, my company had offered me a promotion, senior consultant, a 35% pay bump. The catch? It was based in our Chicago office. I'd been hesitating. The thought of leaving home, leaving them, had made me pause. But that tether? It had just been cut. At 11:30 that night, I called my boss. "I'll take the Chicago position," I said without preamble. There was a beat of silence. "That's fantastic, Elena," he replied, clearly surprised. "When can you start?" "How soon do you need me?" "Well, the sooner the better. The Hawkins account is floundering without leadership." 3 weeks, I said, steady as steel. "I'll be there in 3 weeks." Same deadline they gave me. Perfect. The next morning, I called a realtor. Not one from my parents' circle. I found a woman in the next town over. Discreet. Professional. Unconnected. I listed my house just under market value, priced for a quick, quiet sale. The photos went live on Friday. By Monday, I had 3 offers. By Wednesday, I'd accepted an all-cash deal. 21-day close. It was all lining up beautifully. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. To my family, I was the dutiful daughter prepping the house for Marcus and Vanessa's big move. I talked about clearing space for the nursery, which explained the moving boxes. I asked about curtain colors. I even invited Vanessa over to plan out the layout. She walked through my house like she owned it already, pointed to my walls, my floors, my furniture. This will go. That needs to change. Oh, and I'll definitely need to replace that cheap little dining set. I nodded and smiled while imagining her face when the truth hit. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was executing my exit. I transferred my funds to a new bank. I left just enough in the old accounts to keep up appearances. I signed a lease in Chicago, digitally, under a new email address. I rerouted all my mail to a P.O. box. I sold what furniture I couldn't take and packed the rest into a storage unit under a different name. 3 days before the house closed, I took a business trip, really a flight to Chicago to finalize everything. When I came back, it was just for a day, just long enough to sign closing papers, collect my cashier's check, and load what was left into a rented U-Haul. On what was supposed to be their moving day, I was already 300 miles away, sipping coffee in my new apartment, staring out at Lake Michigan. My phone buzzed nonstop that morning, calls, texts, voicemails. I could picture the scene perfectly. Marcus and Vanessa pulling up with their U-Haul, expecting to take over. My parents there to help. All of them standing in the driveway, stunned, watching strangers move furniture into what they thought was Marcus's new home. I could practically hear the confusion in their voices as the new owners explained. Yes, we bought this house from Elena. No, she didn't mention anything about family moving in. Yes, the sale is final. No, we don't know where she went. I let myself savor that mental image for a full minute. Then I silenced my phone and unpacked my first box. Fallout. The calls kept coming. Voicemails, texts, missed calls, one after another, piling up like wreckage. At first, it was confusion. Elena, where are you? The house. There are people here. What's going on? Then came the anger. How could you do this to us? Your brother is standing here with his pregnant wife and nowhere to go. You need to call us back right now. Eventually, the tears. Please, Elena, we can fix this. Just tell us where you are. We're family. I waited 2 days. Then I responded with a single, cold text. The same place I was supposed to go, I guess. Figured out. Then I blocked every number. It wasn't just mom and dad. One by one, the extended family joined the outrage parade. Melissa, my cousin, texted, "You've always been jealous of Marcus. This is a new low even for you. My aunt, your mother hasn't stopped crying since you pulled this stunt. Is that what you wanted? My uncle, your grandfather would be ashamed of your selfishness." Block, block, block. Each deleted contact felt like I was peeling off a heavy, wet blanket I didn't realize I'd been dragging around my whole life. And then, silence. 2 weeks into my new life in Chicago, I got a message from Jen, an old co-worker. Not super close, but close enough to still hear family gossip. Yen? So, your brother and his pregnant wife are living in your parents' basement now. Your mom's telling everyone you had a mental breakdown. Just thought you should know. I didn't reply, but I didn't block her either. Jen became my only window into the crumbling world I'd left behind. A month later, she texted again. Remember that crypto thing Marcus was into? Apparently, he'd invested a lot more than anyone knew. A lot more. That didn't surprise me. What had surprised me was arrest. Marcus had somehow convinced my parents to invest their retirement savings into the same sketchy crypto scheme, promising them guaranteed returns. 40%. 6 months. When the market tanked, which of course it did, Marcus panicked. Instead of cutting his losses, he doubled down. Took out payday loans. 3 of them. Maxed out 2 credit cards in my parents' names. They didn't even know until the collection call started. By the 3rd month, the situation was a full-blown implosion. The crypto wasn't just a failure. It was part of a scam. Marcus could be facing legal trouble from some side hustle connected to it. My parents had taken out a second mortgage on their home to cover his immediate debts. Vanessa was threatening to leave him, even while pregnant. And me? I didn't feel satisfied or vindicated. I just felt sorry. Not for Marcus. Not for my parents. But for that baby. That innocent child being born into chaos. So I did the only thing my heart would allow. I sent an anonymous gift card to a baby supply store, addressed to Vanessa's mother's house. No note. No return address. Just a quiet gesture. The only concession I would make to the guilt that still flickered at the edges of my freedom. A life of my own. My new life in Chicago. It was everything I hadn't even known I needed. The job challenged me in ways my old role never did. I wasn't just clocking in and out, I was growing. For the first time in my adult life, I had people around me who didn't know anything about Marcus. Well, my family, or the years I'd spent bending over backwards just to be noticed. To them, I was just Elena, competent, confident, capable. Not the backup plan, not the fixer, not the forgotten daughter. Just me. 6 months after I left, a letter arrived at my P.O. box. The return address stopped me cold. My grandfather's nursing home. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. The handwriting shaky, but familiar. Elena, I've heard some version of what happened. Your mother's story doesn't quite add up, and I suspect the truth is somewhere very different. I always knew you were the strong one, the smart one. I'm sorry I let your parents convince me Marcus needed more help in the will. They said you'd always land on your feet. But I see now, it was you who needed protection all along. I've changed my will. It's not much, but it's something. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Love, Grandpa. I sat on the floor of my apartment, holding that letter in both hands as tears rolled down my face. It was the first time I cried since leaving. Not out of regret or sadness, but because someone had finally seen me. Really seen me. 9 months after I'd disappeared from their world, Jen texted again. Vanessa had given birth to a baby girl. They named her Michelle. My name. Jen said it was Vanessa's way of extending an olive branch. I didn't respond. But that night, I mailed another anonymous gift. A savings bond. One that would mature the year baby Michelle turned 18. Attached was a note and signed. For college. No strings punto. Because even though I was done with that family, I wasn't made of stone. That little girl didn't choose her parents. She deserved a shot. Even if I had to give it from far, far away. The final goodbye. Almost a year to the day after I vanished from their lives, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. Michelle. It was my mother. Her voice was small, fragile. Nothing like the woman who had once so confidently given away my home like it was a party favor. I didn't say anything, just waited. Please don't hang up, she said quickly. We need help. There it was. We need help. It was always we need help. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't say she missed me. Didn't apologize. She launched straight into the crisis. Your father had a minor heart attack last month. The bills are piling up. And Marcus and Vanessa and the baby are still living with us. We're about to lose the house. My old self would have gone straight into problem-solving mode. I would have opened a spreadsheet, moved money around, started calculating interest rates and debt consolidation plans. But that Elena? She was gone. I'm sorry to hear that, I said calmly. I hope Dad recovers quickly. There was silence. A sharp, breathless pause. That's it. Her voice cracked. Your family is falling apart, and that's all you have to say? I took a breath. What do you want me to say, Mom? That I'll swoop in and bail everyone out again? That I'll light myself on fire just to keep you all warm? The silence deepened. We're your family, she whispered. No, I said quietly. You're Marcus's family. I was just the safety net. The plan B. The one you knew would always land on her feet, while you poured every ounce of love, money, and energy into him. I heard her sharp inhale, like I'd slapped her. Who told you that? I almost laughed. Does it matter? Because it was the truth. It had always been the truth. She didn't deny it. I have to go, Mom. Take care of yourself. And I hung up. Then I blocked the number again. That night, my company offered me another promotion. This time, to our international office. In London. I said yes, without hesitation. Final part, firelight and freedom. The night before my flight to London, I stood on the balcony of my Chicago apartment, a glass of wine in hand. Below me, the city shimmered. Lake Michigan reflected the lights like melted stars. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who said yes even when it hurt. The one who showed up, stayed late, paid the bills, made excuses for everyone else. The one who waited year after year for someone to see her, to choose her. I thought about every version of me who stayed quiet, played nice, kept the peace. And I raised my glass to her. She had done her best, but she was gone now. In her place stood a woman who knew something life-changing, something no one had ever taught me growing up. You don't know your life to people who only ever saw you as convenient. I had spent years being a safety net, but no one ever caught me when I fell. And now I had built something of my own. A new life, a new home, a future no longer tethered to people who drain me. Not out of malice, just out of entitlement. And that might be worse. I didn't leave because I was angry. I left because I was finally done setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. They expected me to burn quietly forever. Instead, I walked away and built my own fire, one that didn't need anyone else's approval to burn bright. As I sipped my wine, my phone buzzed. A text from my new London flatmate, confirming my arrival time. Tomorrow, I'd be landing in a new city with new challenges and new people. A whole new world waiting to meet the version of me no one back home ever bothered to know. The real me. No longer the backup plan. No longer the invisible daughter. Just me. Independent. Seen. Enough. I turned off my phone, breathed in the crisp night air, and whispered a quiet goodbye to the cold. Because I wasn't going back. Not ever. Epilogue. For anyone listening. If you've ever been the dependable one, the fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who was always fine, so no one ever asked if you were actually okay, this story was for you. If you've ever been passed over, pushed aside, or made to feel like your worth was measured by how much you could sacrifice for others, know this. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to stop carrying people who refuse to stand on their own. And that doesn't make you cold or heartless. It makes you human and brave. Sometimes, choosing yourself means disappointing everyone who benefits from your silence. Sometimes, finding peace means losing the version of family you were taught to protect at all costs. But hear me, you're not a safety net. You're not a spare part in someone else's story. You deserve a life that doesn't come at the cost of your own. So build your fire, light it with your own hands, and never again apologize for the warmth you keep for yourself. This isn't the end. It's your beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.